All right, welcome to MMA on the Rocks. This is episode number 46, which may or may not broadcast live on YouTube. It's Sunday, May 7th, and we're coming off of Cinco de Mayo weekend. I'm not going to lie, I overdid it on the tequila a little bit this weekend. I'm joined by my co-host, Jeff the Animal Wilson. Jeff, it's nice to see your face for a change while we do this. How you doing today?
Bill, I feel great, man. The school year's almost over. I'm wrapping up my first year of teaching and, had a good weekend of Don Julio, a good buddy of mine.
Oh, yeah, I was getting into a little Don Julio myself, and last night I was getting into a lot of different things. I know I ended the night with Don Julio, and I know I started with some Herradura Añejo. Am I saying that correctly?
I actually don't know what that is, so I'm going to go ahead and say that you are saying that correctly.
All right, yeah, let's say that I am. So Añejo is aged tequila, so that's the darker color. It's aged usually in wood barrels, so much like whiskey. So I was sipping on some of that at the beginning of the night, and at the end of the night, I was doing some Don Julio, which is I get the silver or the blanco tequila, which I prefer. I like to sip on tequila. I don't really like to do it as shots. I know we've talked about this several times on the podcast before. I'm not big on tequila shots, but being that it was Cinco de Mayo weekend and I was with some rowdy company last night, I did end up doing some tequila shots. So I know how I started and finished the night for sure, but everything else in between is a little fuzzy. Friday, which was Cinco de Mayo, I did go and get some Mexican food at a local place, and actually that you've eaten their food, Jeff, Santa Fe, here in Clearwater, and really nice Mexican food. I had a Modelo to wash it down. I know you're a fan of the Modelo, Jeff. So yeah, it was a lot of tequila this weekend to celebrate the victory of Mexico over the French many hundred years ago. And we celebrate by drinking our faces off and eating tacos because that's what's important to us here in America, and I'm guilty of it as well. Did you do anything else to celebrate the holiday weekend, Jeff?
Not too much. I was kind of tired. It's been a long week, but, enjoyed some Don Julio Friday. And quick history lesson. A lot of people confuse Cinco de Mayo for Mexican Independence Day, which it is not. That's actually September 19th. So it's accurate what you said, that they held off the French at Puebla, which is a port town. So quick history lesson there for those of you who are curious. And if you're not curious, well, you'll learn something.
Yeah, you didn't have a choice. You heard it. Now you absorbed it, and you'll never forget that fact, hopefully. How are you drinking that Don Julio?
On the rocks,
Out of
dude.
curiosity.
Yeah, on the rocks. I wasn't feeling the shots. So,
Yeah.
took it easy on that.
Yeah. I always say, drink it the way you want to drink it. If you want to sip it, sip it. If you want to take it in a butt funnel, take it in a butt funnel. That old adage. I prefer to sip tequila also. Tequila was originally created to be a sipping drink. And for some reason, I guess the college fraternity culture here in America, we started doing it as shots. And man, it doesn't go down so smooth as a shot. I really do enjoy sipping on some tequila neat, or sometimes a little splash of water, or on the rocks, of course. But yeah, so too much tequila this weekend, but what are you gonna do? At the end of the day, I can't complain. I had a nice time. I enjoyed this victory over the French weekend. So while we're on the topic of Mexico and defeats, big boxing match over the weekend, or kind of debatable whether or not it was a big boxing match. Canelo Alvarez taking on Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who is, of course, the son of You guessed it, Julio Cesar Chavez. It seems like he did inherit his dad's chin, which is a pretty legendary chin in the sport of boxing. Of course, widely regarded as the greatest Mexican boxer of all time. Son took a whooping last night. Did you catch that fight, Jeff?
I did not. I caught the very last 30 seconds of the last round. But, according to the stats, it looked like Canelo won every round. He threw about 3 times as many punches.
Yep.
So, Chavez Jr. got walloped, and Canelo, I know we were texting about it earlier in the week. Canelo's a phenomenon, man. He's a beast.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. And from what I understand, they already booked Canelo versus Triple G, Gennady Golovkin. That's going to take place September 16th. And Dana White has already put out a statement saying that that fight has taken the date that was potentially going to be Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor, the fight that may or may not happen, that everybody's sick of talking about. So, and hearing about. So we're not going to talk about it here. But it seems like it was kind of inevitable last night that Chavez didn't really have a chance, and they were trying to build it up like he did. He's never had the greatest work ethic. He got kicked out of Freddie Roach's camp because he was skipping practices and took off to Mexico without telling him during a fight camp and just doing silly things and just not training hard. He had so much natural talent, and I think he had a really harsh weight cut for this fight as well. So he didn't look well at the weigh-in. And like you said, Canelo is just a beast. So it'll be him at Triple G, which I feel like is the biggest fight you can make in boxing right now. Given the current scope of everything that's going on in boxing. So that fight already scheduled. It seems like they may have had it already planned before last night's fight even took place. So what are your thoughts on all of that information I just downloaded on you, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm excited, man. There's been a lot of talk about Triple G and Canelo going at it, and I don't know how many people out there know this, but Canelo Alvarez, he had a kid early on, so not him, his girlfriend at the time, but he has actually been a professional boxer since he was 15, which is amazing. I mean, he fought Floyd Mayweather at the age of 21, and he already had like 29, 30 straight victories.
Yeah. A lot of people think it may be a different story if Floyd and Canelo were to rematch more recently, since Canelo has come such a long way. But I don't think we're going to see that happen. It seems to be pretty difficult to get Floyd in the ring these days, even with Giant Payday. But we won't go down that rabbit hole today. If there's a fight officially announced, maybe we'll break that one down. But I know everybody's sick of hearing about it, so you're not going to hear about it here on MMA on the Rocks. Speaking of MMA on the Rocks, which if you didn't know, that's what you're listening to, I put up some more YouTube content. So we're recording this now on YouTube, so we're giving the YouTube platform some love. I uploaded my newest cocktail recipe yesterday. It's an original cocktail called an Appleberry Jewel, or an Appleberry Crown Jewel, because it uses Crown Royal Regal Apple, which is really nice. I'm not too big on the fruit-flavored whiskeys because they're typically a little too sugary for me, but the Crown Royal is real subtle with the sweetness, and I was inspired to create a cocktail with it. So you can go on YouTube at MMA on the Rocks and check that one out. Jeff, have you had a chance? Don't let me down. Have you tried the Gold Rush cocktail yet?
Bill, I have not. It's on my list of things to do, but unfortunately, this week we're doing state testing over at my school, so it's been a little bit of a chaotic week. My school district makes the kids attend a full day of class after the state testing, which I'm totally against. I think we should all go home and be happier people.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. Give the kids a break. It's the end of the year. They don't feel like doing shit anyways. So speaking of breaks, we've had a long one from UFC, and I'll get back to bugging you about the cocktails a little later. You got 2 to try now, Jeff, because we got the new video up on YouTube. So everybody go check that out. And thank you to everybody who has already responded on Twitter. There was a couple people last night who, as soon as I tweeted out the video, they said, hey, I happen to have all the ingredients for this and I already made it. And they really enjoyed it. So check out those cocktails. I think you'll like them. And if you don't, it's a free video anyway. So you shouldn't be fucking complaining about it. All right. So I'm all over the place right now, but we've had a break from UFC for the past 2 weeks. So we're building up to this huge UFC card next week in Dallas, Texas, the Heavyweight Championship. Stipe Miocic, the current champion, defending against Junior Dos Santos. And then we got a strawweight, women's strawweight championship between Joanna Jedrzejczyk and Jessica Andrade. So let's dive into this card. I'd say we start at the top and work our way down. What do you think, Jeff? What are your thoughts on this heavyweight championship fight, which is actually a rematch between Stipe and JDS?
Yeah, so the first time they fought, it was just a bloodbath, if I recall. And Junior Dos Santos picked up the win against a younger, less experienced Stipe Miocic, and it was just a bloodbath. Personally, I thought that the decision went the wrong way. I thought Stipe won that one, but it was super close, and I'm excited for them to get it on again. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it was a close fight. I don't know that I would have called it a robbery, but it definitely could have gone either way. It could have even been a draw, the way I saw it. But Stipe, from what I remember, Stipe, I haven't watched this fight recently at all, so I'm basically just pulling this out of my ass. But if I remember correctly, Stipe was the fresher fighter towards the end of this fight. So, and Dos Santos not really known for a tremendous gas tank. I mean, he always comes in great shape, but it'll be interesting to see him go 5 rounds. This is an awesome fight, and these are 2 guys who love to stand up and box, so that's why they're both always exciting. Stipe would definitely have the advantage in the wrestling department, but Junior Dos Santos has awesome takedown defense, so I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of wrestling in this one. You're probably going to see a boxing match with 4-ounce gloves. And I think it's a really exciting fight. And, it's going to be in a big arena in Dallas. So, everything's bigger in Texas. And the co-main event, Joanna Jedrzejczyk, 13-0, undefeated women's strawweight champion, taking on Jessica Andrade, who recently dropped down from bantamweight, one of the only women that I know of, at least at this high level, who has been able to drop from 135 pounds to 115 pounds. And she's an animal, Jeff. I think it's not going to be the walk in the park that a lot of people would anticipate for Joanna Jedrzejczyk. Andrade is a big, strong fighter who can really impose her will and, make it a dirty fight for Joanna, who, is going to want to keep her range and use her awesome Muay Thai skills. I think this has the makings for a real war. What are your thoughts on this one, Jeff?
Agree with you 100%, Bill. And Jessica Andrade, she's no slouch, man. She's well-rounded. She's a good Muay Thai fighter. She's got some solid jiu-jitsu, and I think she can mix it up really well. I think you're right. I think Joanna Jedrzejczyk is going to have to pack a lunch for this one.
Yeah. There's no easy fights anymore. I mean, there's a lot of tough women in this division. And speaking of which, some exciting news that was just released. The next season of Ultimate Fighter has just been altered. I think it was supposed to be male middleweights, and they decided that they're going to make it a featherweight division for the women, which you and I have been advocating for the longest time on this podcast. So anybody who's been listening for a while knows that we've been wanting to see a 125-pound division for the women for the longest time. And there's so many gaps in women's MMA still, because You know, Bellator has a 125-pound division, but they don't have the 135. So this will be awesome. So now we'll have 115, 125, 135, and 145 in the UFC. So the winner of the Ultimate Fighter season is going to be crowned champion, which is the same thing they did with the women's strawweight. And that was a really exciting season. I would like to see some current UFC fighters on the roster participate in this season and change weight classes, either going up or going down. So any other thoughts on the strawweight championship match between Jedrzejczyk and Andrade, or the upcoming Ultimate Fighter announcement, Jeff?
Yeah, I think it's a good move on the UFC's part, man. Get some flyweights in there. If they can, maybe bring in one or two fighters from Bellator that we've talked about, because they're exciting to watch too. So I'm excited. The UFC is doing some big things, and I hope that the flyweight division championship is a little bit more successful than the featherweight championship was in the women's division, because we remember that matchup was a little bit messy, and we haven't heard any upcoming title fights for Jermaine Durandamy. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, some weird things going on there. Jermaine Durandamy, that's a kind of a tongue twister. I get Joanna Jedrzejczyk just fine, but Jermaine Durandamy throws me off. She was supposed to fight Cyborg, and that got called off. Supposedly, Durandamy has some personal issues going on. She didn't really disclose what they were, but that fight was canceled, and now Cyborg is going to fight Megan Anderson, who I guess still is the Invicta 145-pound champion, and she's a big, strong Australian gal, and I think she'll put on a good scrap with Cyborg. But Cyborg is a tall order for anybody in the world. I think, male or female, possibly. So moving down this UFC 211 card, we've got a welterweight matchup. Should be a title eliminator between Demian Maia and Jorge Masvidal. And a lot of people are confused why Demian Maia would take this fight, since he should have been next in line for a title shot. Very risky fight for him, because Jorge Masvidal has some of the best boxing in the division, and he has excellent takedown defense. Now, Maia's going to be a lot bigger, so he may be able to use his size to get the fight to the ground, which obviously is where he's going to want it. But very risky fight for someone who was guaranteed a #1 contender spot, and he made it seem like the UFC kind of twisted his arm and forced him to take this fight. And of course, Masvidal's been just calling people out and working his way up the ladder and really making a name for himself since moving up to welterweight. So that's the other thing to mention about this fight is Masvidal used to fight at 155, and he's going up. Demian Maia used to fight at 185, and he has gone down. So that may be indicative of the size difference there. How do you break this one down, Jeff, and how do you see it going?
Hey, man, Masvidal's a good striker, and initially I thought it was not the best move to call out someone who's ranked so high in the welterweight division, but he just got a really solid win over Donald Cerrone, man, and he put away Jake Ellenberger before that, so he's a solid fighter, and I think the size is definitely going to come into play. Masvidal is probably good at using his reach, but, I mean, he's a tall dude, he's 5'11", but Demian Maia is just a bigger dude coming from a bigger weight class, and his jiu-jitsu, we've talked about it so many times. He's world class. He can, whether you like it or not, he's like a wave, man. He just comes over you like water onto the sand, He makes it look so easy.
Nice analogy. Yeah. I think it's arguable that he does have the best jiu-jitsu for MMA. I've said before that I think Jacare is the most aggressive jiu-jitsu. Demian Maia is the kind of guy who doesn't want to hurt anybody or cause any damage. He just wants to, get the fight over with. It's an interesting matchup for sure, because you have two very different styles, and Masvidal is definitely a lot more aggressive. But, Demian Maia has been in there with Anderson Silva, so he's not afraid to stand in front of anybody. Although you could argue he was afraid to stand in front of Anderson Silva because he spent most of the most of that fight on his butt scooting around trying to convince Anderson to go to the ground. I know where that definitely won't happen, and that's in the fight between Frankie Edgar and Yair Rodriguez. So another head scratcher here because Frankie Edgar is ranked really high, but he's in kind of a odd limbo state because he's already lost twice to the champion Jose Aldo. Is that right? Did they fight twice? Because
Yeah. The second one I think was at UFC 203 or 204, and
I think it was 200.
yeah, you're right. It was 200, and Aldo regained
Yeah.
the interim belt. But since Conor McGregor had to relinquish his belt, they made Aldo the champion. And I think Max Holloway is interim champion at
Yeah.
145.
Yeah, so they're going to fight soon. So Frankie Edgar's in kind of that weird spot. I guess if he wins this fight and Max Holloway wins, then we could get Frankie Edgar versus Max Holloway for the featherweight championship. There was also talk of Frankie Edgar dropping down to 135, but that division is going to be pretty backed up for a while too, because you got the three top guys at each other's throats, quite literally, in Cody Garbrandt, TJ Dillashaw, and Dominic Cruz. But what do you think about this fight between Frankie Edgar and Yair Rodriguez? Yair Rodriguez, very flashy, a lot of capoeira style kicks in his fighting style. A lot of people would argue he hasn't really been tested yet. He wiped out a very tired looking BJ Penn in his last fight, and then he looked great against Alex Caceres. Alex Caceres, I think, was the first season of Ultimate Fighter that nobody's ever heard from again. So I don't know where that name came from in my mind. Probably because I started watching the first season of Tough again a couple of weeks ago. It's just that's a really entertaining season. So going off on a tangent, but this fight, Frankie Edgar, Yair Rodriguez, what are your thoughts, Jeff?
This is going to be an interesting fight. Frankie Edgar always pushes forward. He's solid everywhere, very well-rounded. But Yair Rodriguez is super athletic. He can pull off kicks from weird angles. This is going to be interesting. I feel like if Frankie Edgar is not careful, he could get caught, especially Rodriguez is a young, hungry guy. So this is going to be a really interesting matchup.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we know Frankie Edgar can definitely take a shot. He's got chins in the division and, possibly in the sport, especially after, those huge shots he took from Gray Maynard's stand out. And then, his last fight, he got in there with Jeremy Stephens and stood toe-to-toe with him for a lot of the fight. And Jeremy Stephens has the kind of power that can put anybody out. And, Edgar was able to overcome that. I think it's a really exciting fight. I think it will say a lot for Yair Rodriguez if he's able to come away with a victory. And I think if Frankie Edgar wins, it will make a statement about how relevant he still is in the division. And, it's unfortunate that he's been in such this weird limbo. So another fight I want to touch on, Henry Cejudo and Sergio Pettis. This is an exciting, and some might say that this is a big step up for Sergio Pettis, but he's looked awesome in his last couple of fights, and we definitely need some competition in this division. We need somebody to step up and give Mighty Mouse a fight. And I would see the winner of this potentially getting a title shot, maybe. I don't know. Cejudo did lose his last fight to Benavidez, right? But what are your thoughts on this fight, regardless of title implications, Jeff?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, Pettis, young, hungry guy. He's pretty well-rounded, brother of Anthony Pettis, so he's got some good striking techniques. But Henry Cejudo, Olympic wrestler, man, tough dude. but he also got slaughtered by Mighty Mouse in like the first round. So I think you're right. As much as I hate to admit it, Bill, I think that Mighty Mouse has finally cleaned out this flyweight division.
Yeah.
I don't know what you do anymore at this point.
Yeah. Well, unless young Sergio Pettis can come through and put on an impressive performance against Cejudo and really make a statement, that might be a marketable fight for flyweight if he's challenges for the title there. But exciting fight. I think this card gets better as you go down the line. So kicking off the prelims or the prelims, main event of the prelims, Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier. This should be a barn burner. You got Eddie Alvarez coming off his loss to Conor McGregor, obviously, and Dustin Poirier looked great in his last fight against Jim Miller, and before that he got knocked out against Michael Johnson. So both of these guys have lost to Conor McGregor, the current champion of the division, who his son was just born over the weekend, I believe. So what do you think about this one, Jeff? This one's going to be pretty explosive, I think.
Yeah, man, this could have performance of the night, man. Eddie Alvarez, well-rounded, solid wrestler, really good striker, and Dustin Poirier, man, he puts on shows, man.
Yeah.
Before his loss to Johnson, he had strung together about 3 or 4 wins. So this is going to be a really fun fight to watch, and I like you said, up and down, this card looks awesome. I'm really excited for this entire card.
Yeah, I agree. And I would have really loved to see Eddie Alvarez take on Nate Diaz coming off that title shot. I think that would have made the most sense. But, Nate Diaz has said publicly, I guess he's going to lay low, and he really is holding out for that Conor McGregor fight. So that's the story there. And the sleeper fight that I feel like not a lot of people are going to be talking about, but it's probably the fight I'm most excited for on this entire card, and that's Chaz Skelly against Jason Knight, who they call the Redneck Diaz brother, I think. And I remember talking about Jason Knight a long time ago. If you go back all the way to episode 2 of MMA on the Rocks, so 44 episodes ago. It was another tequila episode, if I remember correctly. And I remember telling everybody to keep an eye out for Jason Knight. This guy has really exciting style. He goes at a crazy pace from bell to bell. And, of course, Chaz Skelly does too. So these two guys have very similar styles. They have very similar records. Chaz Skelly 17-2, Jason Knight 16-2. Jason Knight absolutely demolished Alex Caceres in his last fight and tapped him out with a rear naked choke. He's just got like so much energy, and he gets so angry, and he talks shit throughout the fight, and he's really exciting. And Chaz Skelly has very similar style. So I think this fight has the potential for fight of the night as well. What do you think about this one, Jeff?
Yeah, man, Jason Knight, I can't tell if he's a really good fighter or if he's just half crazy, but he's so fun to watch. I remember seeing that Alex Caceres fight, and he was just pretty dominant, keeping up a really high pace, relentless pressure. And Chaz Skelly, I don't know too much about, but his nickname is the Scrapper, so I imagine there's a good reason he's earned it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's going to be really awesome. So the bottom half of the card is some lesser known fighters. David Branch versus Krzysztof Jotko. That should be an interesting fight. I know the UFC has been slowly building Jotko up, and he's got a huge fan base. And then we got some lesser known fighters on the rest of the card, but that usually makes for really exciting fights. So I can't wait to see this card. I'm actually going to be out of town next weekend. I'm going to Disney World, Jeff. So somewhere in the area of the Magic Kingdom, I plan on watching these fights. maybe with Mickey Mouse, maybe not, but somewhere. When I first moved down here, we got some Disney passes, and I realized that they expire after 6 months or something. So got to use those up. Going to the Magic Kingdom. So if anybody has some recommendations, any big Disney buffs that listen to this fighting and drinking podcast, please send them my way on social media at MMA on the Rocks, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. I've been into Instagram a lot more lately. Been putting up some memes and some funny things. I have to always text them to Jeff so he sees what I'm putting up, because Jeff's not on Instagram, but he is on Twitter at @animal_Wilson. So, if you want to get on there and have some MMA debates with Jeff, he's always up for that. Any other comments about the rest of this card or Disney World or anything alcohol related or social media related, Jeff?
Yeah, real quick, I refuse to make an Instagram because it's annoying. And two, going back to that Jocko fight real quick, he's fighting David Branch, who he's not too well known, maybe to UFC fans, to the casual fans, but I've been following this dude for a while. He used to train out of Hoboken, and I think he's at Renzo Gracie, New York now, which is the headquarters of Renzo Gracie. And David Branch, coming out of the World Series of Fighting, he was the light heavyweight and middleweight champion at the same time. So this dude's a tough guy, man. I don't know if Jocko Jocko's a good fighter, but I think he's going to have a real tough time with David Branch. This dude is legit.
Yeah, all great points. The only counter to that would be that champions from other organizations that come over to the UFC tend to not have the best luck. But I'm really excited about that fight too. So I'm excited about this whole card. I'm excited to go to Disney World, of course, but I might be a little more excited for UFC 211 from Dallas, Texas. The other thing I wanted to bring up, if you don't have anything else on UFC 211, a fight announcement between Stevie Ray and Paul Felder, which I don't know off the top of my head when it's going to be, but whenever it is, I think it's going to be awesome. And if I remember correctly, I think this is the fight you wanted to see, Jeff. And, the UFC made your wish their command. So what do you think about that one?
Super excited, man. I was talking about how Paul Felder, not on the show, but we've texted about this, about how Paul Felder would be a good matchup for Stevie Ray. They both push the pace. They both move forward. It's going to be an awesome fight. I'm excited for that one, too.
Yep, agreed. So a lot of great action. We've had a long layoff, and it'll be great to get some UFC back in our lives. And it's pretty much all I got. The other thing I wanted to say is make sure you guys are using the hashtag. If you're drinking during the fights, I want to know what you're sipping on. Hashtag MMA Drink Talk. I always check it, and I'll always retweet anybody who uses the hashtag. Pictures of your drinks are preferred. New and unusual recipes, always welcome. I plan on putting up some more YouTube content. The poll I put out on Twitter, it seems like a lot of people want to see a tequila cocktail. So I'm going to put together something interesting for you guys that I think you're going to like. I've been doing a lot of research this weekend, obviously, with the tequila. Drank way too much of it, so it's all fresh on the old dome. And I'm going to put something together unusual. I'm going to do an original tequila cocktail, and I think it's going to be fun. Jeff, you got some catching up to do. You got a couple of cocktails to try from the YouTube channel. We got our Gold Rush. We got our Appleberry Jewel. So go check those out. And if you try them, take some pictures, tag me on Instagram, tag me on Twitter, tag me on Facebook, and let me know what you think of them. Feedback is always appreciated. If you're watching this on YouTube, because this may or may not be on YouTube, you can also find MMA on the Rocks on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and any of your favorite podcast platforms. So please check it out. And if you're digging the show, leave us a rating. And if you're not digging the show, let us know why. So we can ease or not give a shit. More likely the latter. All right. So for Jeff the Animal Wilson, my name is Bill Welker. That's all we got. Cheers, everybody. Goodbye.